Hello and welcome back to the NGSS Virtual Crash Course. In Module 1, you learned about the teaching and learning shifts with next generation science standards. In Module 2, you became more literate in understanding the components and practices involved with NGSS teaching and learning. In Module 3, you'll see an array of resources that are meant to support your classroom in NGSS implementation. We're now entering Module 3, Lesson 1, Evaluating Potential NGSS Resources. As we enter this lesson and module, we'll be using the same norm for the course, which is a commitment to unlearning. So this is the time to take the things that you've learned in these modules, take the things that you've unlearned, and really relearn what you want your classroom and your science practices to look like. In terms of housekeeping, please don't forget to fill out the Google form that will track your participation hours. We'll need this by the 22nd of September. Starting Module 3, we know that you've only tracked your hours for Module 1, so this announcement applies to Module 2 and 3, and you can fill that out anytime before September 22nd. You'll fill it out 3 times total, once for Module 1, once for Module 2, and once for Module 3. Our learning objective for this lesson is I can evaluate potential NGSS resources. And if you don't have one already with you, after this video, please access one of your own science lessons or a science lesson from your school curriculum. Today we'll be doing an intro video, which you're watching now. You'll do an evaluation activity using a Google Doc. You'll need that lesson in order to do activity 2. You'll do a Padlet post, and then I'll share some additional resources from Wonder of Science for you to dig into if you'd like to. So let's get our skills of evaluating warmed up. We're going to connect to your prior knowledge from modules 1 and 2 of this course. Take a moment to pause this video and either write down or think about what criteria you think an NGSS aligned unit or lesson has to have if it's really NGSS aligned. When you've had enough time to consider or write down your answer to this question, you can unpause your video. Today, in your exploration activity, you're going to have an extended amount of time to use NGSS vetting or evaluation tools to explore a variety of existing resources. We've internally developed one NGSS vetting tool that can help you take a quick look and determine if a unit or a lesson seems good to go. It also might help you notice a possible red flag. This might not mean that you need to discard the whole tool, lesson, or unit, but that you may need to develop an area or modify something that you see to make it more NGSS aligned. You'll also be taking a second look at the NGSS screening tool. You were first exposed to this tool in Module 1, Lesson 1, but we know you've done a significant amount of learning and unlearning since then. So taking a second look should help you dig into the resources with a more critical and literate eye. And finally, you'll be taking a first look at the Wonder of Science screening tool. We're a big fan of this tool at the NGSS partnership. We actually used it for people to evaluate lessons and units that were modeled in some of our conferences. So big thanks and a shout out to Paul and Laura Anderson for providing such helpful resources. So whichever tool or tools that you decide to use today to help your evaluation and vetting process, you'll start to see some commonalities. On the left side of our vetting checklist, you'll notice the science and engineering practices, the cross-cutting concepts, and the disciplinary core ideas. These are what we've been referring to as the 3 dimensions of NGSS. In NGSS, we also tend to see content, or the disciplinary core ideas, present in instruction, connected to and constructed with the use of phenomena. That phenomena can be driving the learning with an anchor phenomena to start, and investigatory or building phenomena that sustain inquiry and keep the learning moving along. The next criteria is relevance, and this one really requires your critical eye and understanding what works for students in your classroom and your context. I'll give 4 examples of what relevance has looked like for deciding things at my school, which is situated in Medellin, Colombia. The first one is that when we preview lessons, we often need to make sure that they're relevant to our students based on the characteristics of our students as multilingual learners. This might mean that any lesson or resource that we find needs to have added scaffolding so that our students can access content that is in their second language. A second way of looking at relevance is through the illustrative content and if it makes sense to your students. Just last week, we were giving a standardized reading assessment where some of the books contained animals that our students had not really heard of or didn't know much about them. One of those animals was a skunk. In the assessment, our students were prompted to respond how the other animals reacted to the skunk, which would have required their prior knowledge of what a skunk was and the fact that skunks make a strong odor. Our students' answers showed that they did understand and comprehend the reading, but that they just didn't know what a skunk was. So you may need to use that lens in terms of determining how your international or American school, if it's outside of the United States, fits with many pieces of content that are produced within the United States. A third way of thinking about relevance is through the phenomena that you choose. There are thousands of phenomena online that are already prepackaged for teachers teaching NGSS science, but do your best to make those phenomena that you choose something that your students can relate to and that they'll feel interested in. The more close to home it can be, the more authentic it will feel for them. When you use that lens of relevance today, you might notice that there are great pre-made units that have phenomena occurring in Asia or in Africa. And it's not to say that you should never use those units, but since we are located in the Americas, try to also pull in some phenomena and some events that are here in our own countries and in our own continent. And one more example that you'll come across when you're looking at many units that are produced out of the United States or other countries is that you'll need to take a lens of relevance in giving your students possible tools or modifying the lessons to include information needed if they have to understand other currency or other units of measurement. This has come up as there's a lot of measurement and data in much of the science phenomena. And on the map test, we also need to provide our students with some of the unit conversion information because it is a tool that is produced outside of Columbia and does not use the metric system in some of the questions. So that's one final way of looking at relevance. The last part of our vetting checklist is really just making sure that the assessments are also including all of the criteria above. That means assessments are 3D, that they include phenomena, and that they're relevant in hopefully all of the ways that I just mentioned. The red flags when you're vetting NGSS are basically the opposites of what we just talked about for the good to go checklist. So notice today when you're scanning through units, tools, and lessons, if something seems like it is not 3D, this often manifests itself in units or lessons that are content or explanation driven but don't have students using the SEPs or the CCCs. Lessons or units that are not phenomena driven or that just use teacher content explanations or lower order thinking skill based activities to progress through the unit. Items that are irrelevant, so that could work for students in one context but maybe not your students yet. Or situations where you find that the assessment is not a good fit for the overall unit. There are many engaging science lessons that you'll find that have a lot of traditional or rigid closed-ended exam items at the end of them. So make sure that those assessments, just like a good unit, are also three-dimensional, phenomena-based, and relevant to your students. So after you finish this video, let's take a quick look at what you'll be using today in your evaluation process. So as I mentioned, there are 3 possible tools. You might use just one of them, or you might try using one for one resource, another one for another resource, and just mixing it up based on how much you would like to explore. Some things to notice is this NGSS vetting tool is right here in the document, and it uses these little bullet checks. So as you make a copy of this document, if you find things, you can just check them off here. This is a 9-page PDF. It's one of the larger documents, so it definitely works best when you print it out. And this final one from Wonder of Science, this is a 2-page PDF. If you print it front and back, you'll get 2 of these documents. You can also use There are lots of different software programs out there where you can edit and modify your PDF so you can write on them. So that's another possible option for these two screening tools. So just choose the screening tools that work best for your needs today. Down here on page 2, step 2, you're going to find a variety of resources with active links that you can jump into. You can pick 3 of them, more if you have time, that are related to the grade levels that you teach. And you'll put the lesson name and grade from these resources. In some cases, like with Teachers Pay Teachers, it may be a tool more than a lesson. And with some of these, it may actually be a unit. So whatever you're going to be evaluating, just put the name of that here. These are also your bullet checks. So after you evaluate it, check off the one that really fits your overall thinking about vetting that resource. And here in this last column, put some of the reasons that justify your vetting choice or your evaluation. What do I mean by that? Some of the reasons why it is good to go, why you need to develop something, modify something, or throw the unit out. And you'll find other criteria in options 2 and 3 of the tools, not just in the vetting tool. The last part of this lesson is on page 3, step 3. I asked you to bring a lesson of your own or a lesson from your school curriculum, and what you'll do is talk about where that came from. Some schools have teacher-developed resources. Some use curricular programs that are purchased, such as FOSS kits or subscriptions to online platforms. Name the lesson tool or unit name and grade here. Do the same process where you use one of the tools to vet it and choose the checkbox that makes sense given your evaluation. And then say some of the criteria that justify why it is a yes, you definitely vet it, nope, this needs some work in order to be fully NGSS aligned, or no way, we're going to have to discard this unit or do a lot of revamping to make it work. As you go through these resources today, you're going to notice that many of the content producers have figured out that it is important to be aligned with NGSS right now. So you'll see lots of claims like covering 100% of the next generation content standards, or being NGSS aligned in Common Core, or for example, if you search NGSS on Teachers Pay Teachers right now, you'll get almost 24,000 results. If you were looking for news and updates on COVID-19, you would also get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of results, and you would need to use a critical lens to figure out which pieces were really accurate news reporting of facts and which things weren't. And you really will need to do the same with your NGSS lens now that it has become profitable to produce NGSS content or things that are labeled as NGSS aligned. So I encourage you to look closely, notice the things that teachers are being asked to explain in the resources. Is it allowing for students to really have a constructive experience where they are engaging in the 3 dimensions? I encourage you to consider the phenomena. Are students experiencing it? Is it relevant to them, or are they being told? And I encourage you to look at the claims being made for all the different standards that one possible thing you could buy might be related to. Use that critical lens to determine if this is something that you want to drive phenomena in your classroom. You may find some things that you need to completely throw out and abandon. You'll find lots of things that are partway there where you may need to modify and adjust. And you'll find some things that are pretty solid as they are. So use questioning and critical thinking and evaluating as your skills today, your set that you're working with to become more NGSS ready for your classroom. I've included another video in here of a teacher thinking through the vetting tool, so you can watch that before you start your evaluation activity if you're interested and want to see a teacher think through it. And you'll end this lesson after you do the evaluation activity by posting on the Padlet. Please name the tool that you used for vetting one or more resources and describe your evaluation and reasoning. You can pull that directly out of your document for evaluating, just a quick copy and paste to the Padlet. I hope you enjoy exploring these resources today, and I hope that this evaluation activity gets you ready to bring more and more resources into your classroom. Thank you.